poor beggar girl Ava Thompson stood at the corner of Lexington Avenue, clutching her mother's fading hospital bracelet, whispering prayers as taxis splashed dirty water across her bare feet. She had no money, no help, and no time. Her sick mother was crashing again, the nurse's last warning echoing in her ears. She needed a job, any job, to keep her mother alive. So the poor beggar girl swallowed her pride, lifted her trembling chin, and walked straight toward the towering glass skyscraper that held the one man everyone feared, a billionaire known for firing executives with a single cold glance. She had nothing to offer him but a desperate courage born from love, and when she finally reached his marble lobby, she dropped to her knees before him and begged the billionaire for a job to save her sick mother. Her voice shaking, her hands clutching a crayon drawing instead of a resume. People around them froze, watching, judging, whispering. The billionaire looked down at her with unreadable eyes. But what he did next didn't just change her life. It shocked everyone. Why would a ruthless billionaire stop for a barefoot beggar girl? And what secret inside her trembling plea would shake the world he built? Ava Thompson woke before the sun, startled by the sound of her mother gasping in the dark. The single light bulb dangling from the cracked ceiling flickered weakly, casting faint shadows over the peeling walls of the one-room apartment they'd been barely able to keep. For a second, Ava froze, listening, praying it wasn't another episode. But then her mother's faint cry sliced through the silence, and Ava was on her feet instantly. "Mom?" she whispered, rushing to the thin mattress where her mother lay curled, beads of sweat clinging to her forehead. "Mom, please wake up." Her mother's eyelids fluttered, revealing the exhaustion of someone who had been fighting too long. "Ava, water." Ava grabbed the chipped cup and held it to her mother's lips, steadying her shaking hand. She tried to stay calm, but the tightness in her chest wouldn't let go. She had seen this before too many times. And every time it happened, it was getting worse. A sharp knock suddenly pounded on their door, making Ava flinch. "Ava Thompson!" the nurse from downstairs shouted. "This can't continue. Your mother needs her medication today. If you don't pay by noon, I'm going to have to discharge her. I'm sorry, but we can't keep carrying unpaid bills." Ava didn't answer. Her voice was locked behind fear and humiliation. The nurse muttered something under her breath and walked away, her footsteps fading into the hallway. Ava pressed her forehead against her mother's hand. "I'm going to fix this," she whispered. "I promise." But her mother was already slipping back into unconsciousness. Ava stood there for a long moment, feeling like the weight of the entire world had settled on her small shoulders. She was 18, but the world had treated her like she didn't belong anywhere. She'd searched for jobs, begged for odd work, washed dishes behind stores that didn't want to be associated with someone who looked like she slept on sidewalks. And today, she would have to try again. Except this time, failure wasn't an option. Her mother's life was slipping through her fingers. She grabbed the only pair of jeans she owned, tugged on a faded t-shirt, and pulled her hair into a messy ponytail. Her shoes, if they could still be called that, were torn so badly the soles flapped when she walked. She stared at them, sighed, then removed them entirely. Bare feet would draw stares, judgments, but at least they wouldn't slow her down. Before leaving, she knelt beside the mattress and pulled out a small folded paper from beneath it. A childish crayon, drawing a smiling woman in a hospital bed holding a flower, drawn by Ava years ago when she believed drawings had the power to heal. It wasn't a resume. It wasn't a reference letter. But it was the only thing she had that expressed the truth in her heart. She slipped it into her pocket and hurried outside. The morning city was already awake, horns blaring, buses roaring, impatient footsteps filling the sidewalk. Ava's bare feet slapped against the concrete as she pushed through crowds who stared at her like she was invisible until she was directly in their way. Still, she moved with purpose, refusing to let the shame slow her down. She didn't know exactly where she was going, but something inside her kept pulling her toward downtown Manhattan, toward the tall glass tower she had once passed with her mother during better days. The building belonged to Alexander Grant, the billionaire who owned Grant Dominion Enterprises, the man the news constantly portrayed as ruthless, disciplined, and terrifyingly brilliant. Executives feared him. Politicians courted him. Journalists called him the Steel, the heart of Wall Street. He was the last person anyone would expect to help a poor beggar girl. But Ava's mother needed saving, and desperation could make a person do the unthinkable. She reached the skyscraper an hour later, breathless, feet raw from the rough pavement. The glass doors reflected her tiny, exhausted figure, a girl who had no business stepping inside a place where people wore tailored suits and carried portfolios worth millions. The security guard was the first obstacle. "Stop right there," he said sternly, holding up a hand. "This is private property. You can't come in here, look. Just try somewhere else." I just need to speak to someone," Ava said. "Please. It's about my mom." "There are shelters for this kind of thing," he replied, eyeing her bare feet and worn clothes. "You can't speak to anyone here." Ava's cheeks burned, humiliation knotting in her stomach. She took a step back, but a woman's voice suddenly cut through the tension. "It's okay, Marcus. Let her in." Ava turned to see a young secretary with kind eyes walking toward them. Her badge said Emily Rogers. She smiled softly at Ava. "Come with me," Emily said. "You look like you need help." Ava followed her through the gleaming lobby, feeling every pair of eyes on her. Emily led her to a private elevator, swiped her badge, and the doors closed silently. "He's in his office," Emily said gently. "Just try not to be scared. Mr. Grant isn't as cold as people think. Sometimes." Ava swallowed hard. When the elevator opened, she found herself standing before a massive glass office overlooking the entire city. And inside, at a polished desk, was Alexander Grant himself, sharp suit, sharp jaw, and eyes that looked like they could see through walls. Ava's legs trembled as she stepped forward. "Mr. Grant," she whispered, her voice barely there. "Please, I'm begging you. I need a job to save my sick mother." She pulled the crayon drawing from her pocket with shaking hands. Alexander Grant looked at her. The world seemed to hold its breath. And in that moment, something unexpected flickered in his expression, something softer than anyone believed he still possessed. For a long moment, Alexander Grant said nothing. His office, usually filled with the quiet tapping of keyboards, the buzz of phone calls, the hum of strategic meetings, felt unnaturally still. Ava stood in the center of the polished floor like a lost child in a world built for giants. Her bare feet a stark contrast against the marble, her trembling hands holding out the wrinkled crayon drawing like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Alexander finally rose from his chair, slow, measured, observant. To everyone else, he was the billionaire who rebuilt Grant Dominion from a dying company into a financial empire. The man whose decisions could shift markets and whose warnings could sink entire industries. But in that moment, he wasn't looking at the world like a strategist. He was looking at the young girl in front of him, as though she had knocked on a door he didn't know was still part of him. "What is this?" he asked, his voice quiet but sharp. Ava swallowed. It's for you," she whispered. "I don't have a resume, or skills, or anything people want. But I know how to work hard. I know how to care for people. And I know how to try even when everything hurts." Alexander took the drawing carefully, as if it might crumble in his hands. It was childish, shaky, full of color. Ava had drawn a woman in a hospital bed and a girl holding her hand. The sun was shining through the window in bright yellow strokes. Hope, scribbled in color. "Why come here?" he asked. "A building full of executives. You could have gone anywhere." "I tried," she said. "They wouldn't even let me inside. But I thought, people say powerful men can solve anything. And you," her voice cracked. "You could save her." Alexander's jaw tightened. Not in annoyance, but in something closer to restraint, like he was holding back a wave of memories that didn't belong in the light anymore. "Emily," he called. The secretary appeared instantly. "Yes, sir? Clear my schedule for the next hour." Emily blinked. "Everything, sir?" He nodded once. The staff outside the office exchanged looks because Alexander Grant never cleared his schedule. Not for anyone. Not for anything. He turned back to Ava. Sit. Ava obeyed, though her legs wobbled as she lowered herself onto the leather chair opposite his desk. Alexander studied her, analyzing the dirt beneath her nails, the bruising around her ankles, the way her shoulders curled protectively inward like she expected to be pushed away again. Everything about her was a quiet cry for help she had never been given. "What does your mother need?" he asked. "Medication," she said quickly. "And tests. And maybe surgery. They won't tell me anymore because I can't pay the bills." "How much?" I don't know. They stopped telling me when I couldn't pay the last one." Alexander stared at her for several seconds, then exhaled slowly and reached for the intercom. "Call the general driver," he said. "Bring the car to the front entrance." Ava's head snapped up. "Sir? I do something wrong?" He stood. "Come with me." His tone left no room for argument, but it wasn't harsh. It was decisive, controlled, purposeful. Ava followed him out of the office, Emily trailing behind with wide eyes. As they entered the private elevator, Ava clutched the handrail, overwhelmed by everything happening too quickly to process. The doors slid open to the main lobby, where employees stopped mid-conversation, staring as their billionaire CEO walked beside a barefoot beggar girl like it was the most normal thing in the world. Alexander opened the back door of a sleek black Mercedes and nodded toward the seat. "Get in." Ava hesitated only long enough to make sure she wasn't dreaming. Then she climbed in, gripping the seatbelt as if afraid she might fall out of reality. The ride to the hospital was silent at first. Alexander watched her through the rearview mirror, her nervous glances out the window, her fingers twisting the hem of her shirt, the way she pressed her lips together like she was holding back a tidal wave of fear. Finally, he spoke. "How long has she been sick?" 2 years, Ava whispered. "I've been doing small jobs, cleaning cars, washing dishes, carrying groceries, but it was never enough. She kept getting worse." "You shouldn't have had to carry this alone," he said quietly. Ava blinked at him, unsure if she'd heard correctly. When they arrived at the hospital, the nurse at the reception desk nearly dropped her clipboard when she saw Alexander Grant walking toward her with a barefoot girl by his side. He didn't wait for introductions. "I want her mother moved to a private ward," Alexander said. "Run a full examination, all necessary tests, bill everything to Grant Dominion Enterprises." The nurse stammered. "Sir, we can't. Are you sure?" Alexander's icy gaze answered for him. Minutes later, Ava watched as her mother was transferred to a clean private room with soft lighting, fresh sheets, and equipment that actually worked. Doctors rushed in with charts, checking vitals, ordering labs. Nurses adjusted the bed, added warm blankets, spoke gently. Ava stood there trembling, tears rolling down her cheeks. She turned slowly toward Alexander, unable to speak. He wasn't looking at her mother. He was looking at her, studying the raw emotion on her face, the gratitude mixing with disbelief. "Why? Why would you do all this?" she whispered. Alexander's voice took on a bang, softness few ever heard from him. "Because you asked," she swallowed hard. "But I'm just a beggar girl." "No," he said, eyes steady on hers. "You're something else. I just haven't figured out what yet." And for the first time in years, something cracked open inside him, something he didn't know he had locked away. Ava stayed by her mother's bedside long after the doctors completed their evaluations. She watched every movement, every adjustment of the monitors, every scribble on the charts as if memorizing the steps to keep her mother alive. The private room was warm and bright, with sunlight pouring through the wide window, nothing like the dim, cramped ward she was used to. The quiet hum of machines was steady, reassuring. For the first time in months, her mother looked peaceful. It felt surreal. Alexander stood near the doorway, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable yet attentive. He watched Ava stroke her mother's cheek, whispering soft words of comfort, her voice cracking but full of hope. "She's stable for now," one of the doctors said to Alexander. "We'll continue tests and update you as soon as we have results." "Good," Alexander replied, his voice firm but controlled. "Do everything necessary." Ava looked back at him, her eyes wide. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," he said. "This is just the beginning." Before she could ask what he meant, his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening slightly. Whatever the message was, it carried weight. But he silenced the phone and tucked it away. For reasons he couldn't fully understand, being here felt more important than the billion-dollar issues waiting for him. "You should eat something," he said to Ava. "You haven't had anything today." She shook her head. "I'm fine. I don't want to leave her. That's why I'll bring food here," he said, simply. "Come." He didn't wait for her to protest. He stepped out of the room, and she hurried after him, barefoot on cold tiles. They walked to the small cafeteria, drawing stares as people recognized Alexander Grant. He ignored them completely. He ordered 2 meals without asking her preference, as if he already knew she'd refuse anything too fancy or complicated. She sat across from him, fidgeting with her fingers. The food arrived quickly, simple sandwiches and warm soup. "Eat," he said gently. She lifted the spoon, hesitating. She felt guilty eating when her mother couldn't, but she forced herself to take a sip, and immediately tears filled her eyes. Alexander's brows drew together. "Is something wrong?" "No," she whispered. It's been so long since I ate something warm." Something in Alexander's chest tightened an unfamiliar ache, protective and heavy. He had spent years shielded by power, surrounded by cold boardrooms, and colder ambitions. But this girl's vulnerability, the way she clung to hope instead of bitterness, struck something deep within him. A part of himself he thought he'd lost long ago. When they returned to the private room, Ava's mother was awake, her eyes clearer now. She blinked slowly when she saw Ava. "My angel," she murmured weakly. Ava rushed to her side. "Mom, you're okay. The doctors are helping now." Her mother tried to smile. "How did you?" Ava opened her mouth, but Alexander stepped forward slightly, remaining humble, almost gentle in his demeanor. "I'm Alexander Grant," he said softly. "Your daughter asked me for help. I'm glad I was able to offer some." Her mother's breath caught. "Sir, thank you. I don't know how we—" "You don't have to say anything," Alexander said firmly. "Just focus on getting better." Before her mother could respond, her eyelids fluttered again. "Ava, stay safe." "Sweetheart." She drifted into a calm sleep. Ava wiped silent tears from her cheeks. "Thank you, Mr. Grant. I don't know what I would have done if—" "You don't have to face everything alone anymore," he said, surprising even himself with the sincerity in his voice. He hesitated, then added, "Come to the office tomorrow morning. I'll find you a position." Her head snapped up. "Really? You asked for a job," he said. "I'm giving you one." "What job?" she murmured. He looked at her thoughtfully, as if weighing her entire world. "We'll figure that out tomorrow." Before she could say another word, his phone buzzed again. Another message, another demand from the world waiting outside. But for the first time in his career, he chose to let it wait. "I'll have Emily escort you home when you're ready," he said. "And tomorrow, come to the top floor at 9. He turned to leave, but Ava's small voice stopped him. "Mr. Grant?" He paused. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "People like us, people like me, we don't matter to billionaires." For a moment, his eyes darkened not in anger, but in remembrance. Memories flickered behind his expression. Mistakes, regrets, a past he never spoke of. A night lost in shadows, a choice he tried to bury. "You matter," he said simply, "more than you know." He left before she could see the storm in his eyes. Later that night, Ava sat beside her mother, holding her hand, feeling a fragile peace settle into her bones. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know why Alexander Grant had helped her. But for the first time in years, she felt something she had forgotten how to feel. Hope. And somewhere across the city, in the highest floor of the Grant Dominion Tower, Alexander sat alone in his dim office, holding the crayon drawing Ava had given him. He stared at it the way a man stares at a memory he doesn't yet understand. Something about the girl unsettled him. Something about her felt familiar, like a door in his soul he hadn't opened in years. Ava arrived at Grant Dominion the next morning, wearing the cleanest outfit. She owned a faded blouse and the same worn jeans, now washed by a kind nurse overnight. She still had no shoes. She stood outside the revolving doors, heart hammering, wondering if this was all a fragile dream that would disappear the moment she stepped inside. But the memory of her mother's steady breathing gave her courage. She walked forward. The lobby was buzzing with executives, interns rushing with files, assistants balancing coffee trays. Yet the moment Ava stepped in, everything seemed to pause. Whispers rose. Heads turned. She felt every stare like a weight on her shoulders. But she kept moving until Emily spotted her and hurried over with a wide smile. "You made it," Emily said, relieved. "Come on, he's expecting you." He really meant it?" Ava whispered. "Oh, Ava, he absolutely did." Emily led her into the private elevator again, and Ava felt the same strange pull in her chest, like she was stepping into a world that kept insisting she didn't belong. Yet someone powerful had decided she did. When they reached Alexander's floor, the door opened to a large reception area with glass walls and polished steel. 3 assistants looked up, startled, then quickly lowered their gazes as Alexander's deep voice carried from his office. "Send her in." Ava took a nervous breath and stepped inside. Alexander stood by the window, suit crisp, posture sharp, the rising sun casting a halo against the skyline behind him. Yet when he turned toward her, his expression softened just a fraction, not enough for others to notice, but enough for Ava to feel. "You're on time," he said. "Good. Yes, sir," she replied quietly. He gestured to a small desk beside his own. "That's your space." "My space?" she echoed. "You said you wanted a job, so you'll work here, with me." Her eyes widened. She expected cleaning, file sorting, running errands, something small on the lower floors. But this, the top floor, beside the most powerful man she had ever seen? "Sir, I don't know how to do anything executives do." "That's fine," he said. "We'll start small." He pointed to a stack of papers and a set of colored pencils. "You can sit here, draw, write, copy things for me when I ask. Learn, listen." Ava blinked, confused. "Draw, sir?" He nodded once. "Your drawing told me more about your heart than a resume ever could." "That's enough." Her chest tightened unexpectedly. No one had ever said her heart was enough. A knock interrupted them. "Sir?" came a sharp voice. "We need to discuss the Denver acquisition." Alexander tensed slightly. Ava turned to see a tall woman in a navy suit, severe expression, sharp eyes, posture rigid. Her nameplate read, Victoria Hale. Ava immediately sensed 2 things. She was important, and she did not like surprises. Victoria's eyes flicked to Ava, scanning her like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. "Sir, who is this?" she asked, voice tight. "My assistant," Alexander replied smoothly. Victoria's eyebrows shot up. "Assistant? Sir, with all due respect, she looks—" "Victoria." His tone lowered, controlled. "That will be all." She stiffened, forced a nod, and left with a strained smile that did not reach her eyes. Ava swallowed, uneasy. She doesn't like me." "She'll adjust," Alexander said. "People resist what they don't understand." For the next hour, Ava sat quietly in her little desk, coloring lines and patterns while Alexander conducted meetings, made calls, reviewed contracts. Every now and then, he'd glance at her, checking, observing, as if making sure she wasn't overwhelmed. She felt strangely safe in that office, surrounded by wealth, yet anchored by simplicity. But outside the glass walls, Victoria Hale watched with a simmering fury. By noon, Ava had drawn flowers, animals, and a little version of her mother smiling in a new bed. When Alexander finally took a break, she held the drawing toward him shyly. "This is for you, sir." He looked at it silently. His throat tightened. The image, Ava holding her mother's hand, echoed something distant in his mind. Something foggy, like a memory blurred by time and mistakes. Before he could speak, Victoria stormed back in. "Sir, we have a problem," she said sharply. "The shareholders are questioning your priorities after seeing Her. Alexander straightened. My priorities are the company's success. And hers? She asked coldly, eyes slicing toward Ava. A barefoot girl who clearly, you're out of line. Victoria's lips trembled with restrained emotion. Sir, I've been by your side for 6 years. You trust me with billion-dollar decisions. But this? You bring in a street girl to sit beside you? She could be dangerous, manipulative. Who is she really? Ava shrank in her seat, heart pounding. Alexander's voice turned icy. Leave. Now. Victoria's eyes glistened with something Ava couldn't name. Hurt? Jealousy? Fear? But she didn't argue. She left the office stiffly, heels tapping like gunshots on tile. The moment the door clicked shut, the office felt heavier. I'm sorry, Ava whispered. I didn't mean to cause trouble. You didn't, Alexander said. She did. He looked at her for a long moment, then added softly, people like Victoria believe everything must fit neatly into a box. You don't, and that unsettles them. Before Ava could reply, his phone vibrated again. He glanced down and froze. An alert from the company's media department. Breaking headlines. Mystery girl in Billionaire's office. Who is she? Another. Street beggar given top floor access. Inside Grant Dominion scandal. A chill spread across Alexander's face. Victoria had leaked it. He looked at Ava, seeing the fear forming in her eyes. This isn't your fault, he said, voice steady but dark beneath the surface. But now, I need to protect you. Ava swallowed hard. From what? He finally answered. From a world that doesn't know who you really are. The next hours unfolded like a storm hitting without warning. Reporters crowded outside the skyscraper. Drones hovered near the windows, and trending hashtags splashed Ava's face. Blurry photos taken by someone on the executive floor across every news platform. She stared at Alexander's phone screen in disbelief, her heartbeat thudding in her ears. She'd spent her life invisible, unnoticed, ignored. And now the world was talking about her like she was a threat, a scandal, a mystery. Didn't do anything wrong, she whispered, hugging her arms around herself. I know, Alexander said, his tone deep, steady, protective. But people fear what they don't understand. And right now, they don't understand you. Before Ava could respond, Emily rushed into the office, breathless. Sir Victoria ordered an investigation team. They're digging into Ava's past, old addresses, hospital records, anything they can leak. Ava felt her knees weaken. Why? Why would she do that? I'm nobody. I don't matter. Alexander moved closer. You matter more than she realizes. Emily nodded sadly. Victoria's furious. She told the investigators, if this girl is a scam, expose her. Ava flinched as if struck. Alexander's jaw tightened. Enough. Emily, cancel all meetings. Ava stays with me. Emily nodded and left. Alexander placed a hand gently on Ava's shoulder, steering her toward the window seat. Sit. Breathe. I won't let anyone hurt you. His voice had changed, firmer, deeper, more protective than before. Ava felt a warmth spread through her chest, confusing and comforting at the same time. But the peace didn't last long. An hour later, the door burst open without a knock. Victoria marched inside, holding a folder so tightly the edges bent in her hands. Sir, she said sharply, you need to see this. Alexander didn't move. You had no permission to enter. This is bigger than permission. Her voice trembled with adrenaline and something darker. The investigators found something important. Ava's stomach dropped. Victoria threw the folder on the desk, the papers spilling across the polished wood. Hospital intake forms, social service notes, a faded photograph of a baby wrapped in a blanket inside a cardboard box, left outside a clinic 18 years ago. Ava gasped softly. I didn't know about that picture, she whispered. Victoria looked at her, with a mix of triumph and confusion. You were abandoned at birth. No records of your father. No listed relatives. No identification. Whoever left you disappeared. Ava's lips trembled. My mother, she found me by accident. Outside the clinic. She told me she saved me. Not that I was abandoned. Alexander stared at the image of the newborn. His heartbeat grew louder in his ears. Something about the blanket pattern, something about the date, something about the whole story tugged at a shadowed corner of his memory. Victoria crossed her arms. Sir, I warn you, this girl's past is questionable. She could be anyone. She could be using you. Enough, Alexander said, his voice low and deadly calm. But Victoria pressed on, her emotions unraveling. I've been loyal to you. I've worked beside you for years. And now a barefoot street girl sits next to you. The board is questioning your stability, your judgment. And that gives you the right to expose her life to the world? Alexander thundered. Victoria froze. Ava shrank back, heart pounding, tears threatening to spill. Alexander gathered the papers slowly, his eyes never leaving the photograph of the abandoned infant. Something clicked inside him like a locked memory, suddenly shifting open. He whispered, the clinic, the year, the location. Victoria blinked. Sir? Alexander stepped back, breaths uneven. Leave, both of you. Victoria hesitated. Sir, the board meeting. Leave. His command shook the walls. Victoria backed away, shame and fear on her face, and disappeared through the door. Ava stayed frozen on the window seat. What's happening? Alexander's chest rose and fell sharply. He ran a hand through his hair and paced, a man fighting ghosts he never wanted to confront. You said your mother found you outside a clinic? He asked. Yes, Ava whispered. She told me she walked by and saw a baby crying in a box. Did she ever mention anything else? A note? A name? His voice cracked slightly. Ava shook her head. Only that she felt God wanted her to save me. Alexander closed his eyes, grief washing through him. He remembered a night years ago before he built his empire. Before power hardened him, a night lost to dim lights, heartbreak, and a mistake he buried so deeply he pretended it never existed. A woman crying, a rushed departure, regret that haunted him for months. A clinic he visited later, only to be told nothing was filed. He opened his eyes again, something new and terrifying flickering inside. We're doing a DNA test, he said, voice firm. Ava's eyes widened. Why? Because I need to know the truth. The test was done quietly, privately, handled by a doctor Alexander trusted with his life. It took only an hour for the results to come back, an hour filled with silence so heavy, Ava could barely breathe. When the doctor returned with the envelope, Alexander didn't wait. He tore it open. His face went still, terribly still. Ava clutched her chest. Sir? Alexander walked toward her slowly, then suddenly knelt on one knee before her. Ava gasped. His eyes glistened not with power, not with authority, but with a man's soul cracking open. Ava, he whispered, you're my daughter. The room spun around her. She shook her head, tears spilling. No, that's not possible. It is, he whispered. I should have been there. I should have known. His voice broke. I'm so sorry. My God, Ava. All this time. Ava covered her mouth with trembling hands as he pulled her into a gentle, desperate embrace. And she broke crying into the chest of the man she once begged for a job. Daddy, she whispered through sobs. The words shattered him. Later that day, Alexander gathered the entire company executives, staff, board members, media. He stood at the podium with Ava beside him, small but brave. This is my daughter, he announced. Anyone who disrespected her, disrespected me. Victoria burst into tears in the crowd, shame hollowing her eyes. After the announcement, she approached Ava slowly, kneeling at eye level. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice shaking. I was wrong. Please, forgive me. Ava nodded softly. I forgive you. And Victoria cried harder. What followed changed everything. Alexander bought Ava's mother a beautiful home on the waterfront. He hired her as head of a new community foundation. Ava attended a prestigious academy, blossoming with confidence, adored by everyone. She spent afternoons drawing in Alexander's office, filling his once cold world with color. As the months passed, Ava watched her mother and Alexander grow closer, two gentle souls gradually stitched together by fate and the child who loved them. One evening, at a quiet family dinner, Ava giggled and nudged Alexander with her shoulder. "Just ask her." He took a breath, knelt beside the woman who had saved his daughter's life, and held out a ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Yes." Ava squealed and hugged them both, forming a circle of love that felt divinely scripted. Their family, once shattered by life, became whole again, not by wealth, not by power, but by kindness, courage, and fate refusing to give up on them. And in the end, the message was clear. Kindness can lead to miracles. No one should be judged by their circumstances, and destiny always finds its way home.